this session doc, so if you want to jump into here with me, you're welcome to. We have a place down at the bottom where you guys can ask questions, but this is a really informal chit-chat that we're going to have with some people who've been involved in Cam Opener this year. And so first things first, I just want to kind of go down the line and have them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Barth Quenzer. I'm sorry for being late. I'm excited to share some stories from last year's Project Cam Opener. I have been a visual arts teacher for 8 years, and will be transitioning into an instructional curriculum specialist position for visual arts next year.
Awesome. And hopefully you know me or starting to get to know me. I'm Ben Wilkoff, Director of Personalized Professional Learning. My teaching role was a 7th and 8th grade language arts teacher, and then I moved into a district role in Douglas County, starting up their online school and supporting their teachers with professional learning. Had a number of roles since, but I've been doing this now for the last couple of years, and it's my favorite thing that I have ever done, other than working with children, obviously.
My name is Lesley Meyer. I'm a 6th grade social studies teacher at Hamilton Middle School. I was part of Project Cam Opener last year, and some of the ideas that I had last year have changed a lot, and I'm ready for a new year, so I can talk about that.
I'm Caitlin Woolums, and I just finished up my first year teaching at Goldrick Elementary. Last year I did the Denver Teacher Residency to get my teaching license. So I'm excited for another year to get to try new things.
Awesome. And I'm Jessica Raleigh, and I'll be your moderator today. And a couple other things that I wanted to point out that we do have in here as well. If any of you are on Twitter, I am not going to send security after you if you're not, so don't worry about that. But if you are on there, or if at some point during CamCon you want to learn how to be on Twitter, I highly recommend it, and Ben and I are happy to help. So just ask, but we do have a hashtag that we'll be using throughout the year, so it's ProjCo. So anytime that someone says something that's a really big aha for you, or something that you want to keep track of, a lot of times during conferences I'll actually just use the hashtag to keep track of those things that pop into my head while someone's talking that I want to remember. And then I sort of have a nice little archive of my learning for later. So you're welcome to do that, but you also can use the Google Plus community. So that's a space that most of you have been kind of starting to engage in already. Please feel free to use that throughout CamCon as well, and you can share anything that you would like, ask questions in there. That's going to be kind of our big resource space throughout the year, and a place where we can all kind of connect together. Even though we'll be in different affinity groups in the fall, we'll have the whole summer to get to know one another in there. So those things are up at the top, and our process today is really just to have a conversation. So if you think of questions, there is a place down at the bottom where you can start to put those in. If you want to take notes in this document, you can. And then we also have some questions that Ben and I have come up with based a lot on things that people have asked this year and things that people have sort of said, oh, finally I understand this is how I should have done it. That was a lesson learned. So we want to also share some of those things with you as well. But then we also have some video clips that we'll be showing kind of in between some of the discussion that we'll have today. Any questions about the doc or any of those other things? All right, awesome. So the first question that I just want to kind of pose to each of the panelists today is, what is the biggest thing that you've learned? Like, what is that one big lesson learned, and what was the biggest success that you had using video? Barth, do you want to start?
All right. Whoa. I guess one of the biggest things I learned was how to interact through a online forum. So the Google Plus forum that Ben and Jessica created, that was my first time experiencing a digital forum like that. And so that was one of my biggest ahas, of being able to connect myself to that, and then also being able to have access to a lot of different ideas and teachers that I would never have had a chance to ever get to know. And even though it was just through an online forum that we got to know each other, it was windows into other classrooms and experiences that I would never had access to. So that is one of the biggest learning experiences. And then the other part of that question was?
Maybe a lesson learned.
The lesson learned.
Something that you struggled with at first that you kind of figured out.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things I learned was to keep my videos low tech. I think in the past I was doing thinking that the videos had to be edited and they had to be clean and they had to be presentable. And then I'm realizing and looking at other teachers, and they're using their phones, and it's just quick snapshots, and they're not clean and they're not professional looking. They don't have to be, because what's more important than than the quality of the video is the information that's within the video. So that was a great learning for me.
Awesome. So definitely one of my favorite successes was actually when I was able to communicate out to a lot of different stakeholders in DPS some of the things that were going on throughout the year. There are, and we'll probably have a chance to look at a couple, but there were some really amazing videos that were being captured in the first few months of school. Classroom tours, looking at what those first few rituals looked like, and some really amazing things. And I think that idea that it was a window into the classroom was just kind of amazing, and that we could see from all of these different schools, what does the first month of school look like? What does the first few months of school look like? And what does this individual practice look like? So that was a huge success. I think lessons learned, one was, and that's one of the reasons why we in the other room put an emphasis on the planning, was those folks that had a really strong plan and like, this is what I want to do, and this is how often I'm going to record, hugely successful. Those folks who, we were like, well, I'll record next week or, next month. And by the time you got to January or February, it was like, well, I haven't done that yet. And so those kinds of things where I think just having a plan, even if it's just this rough outline, just matters. It really does affect whether or not you're able to do the things you want to do. So, yeah, that was huge.
I would agree with Ben regarding lessons learned. I think that once you start school, it's so easy to get caught up with all the gazillion other things that you have to do and things being asked of you. And I think that a really helpful thing that you should do, and that I'm going to do, is I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'm going to actually write it on my calendar. Once a week or twice a week, whatever it is you want to do, I'm going to actually put it there so that when I see it, I'm going to record, or I'm going to think about a new idea, or I'm going to address it, because it's very, very easy for it to slip away from you once you get started. So that is definitely a lesson learned. In regard to just general things that I've learned, not only did I learn about lessons that other teachers had and a window into their classroom in terms of their teaching, but one thing that I noticed, I really enjoyed looking at how people had their classrooms set up, because you could see their walls and word walls and different things that they had as supports for the lesson that was going on. And I thought that was a very educational aspect of it, not just the lesson itself, but what did they have around the room that helped them?
One of the biggest takeaways that I had came from my own reflecting. So as a new teacher, you don't always have those teacher eyes yet where you're able to see what every student's doing while you're teaching a lesson. And the video that I captured of my students actually showed me, wow, that kid never sits still, or that kid was eating chips during my lesson and I didn't notice at all. So just being able to see, not even focusing on my own lesson in terms of watching the videos, but just what are my kids doing and what do I need to look for next time I'm teaching to help those students or to refocus them. I'd say, what was the other question?
A big lesson learned, something that was a challenge maybe?
Something that was also a challenge was the length of the videos I was taking. I was trying to record all of a lesson, but the ones that I actually found more impactful was when I just captured little tiny pieces, couple minutes, mostly during when the students were working independently, just to capture that and be able to go back and see what were they doing during that time and ask them questions to see what was their learning and what was their thought process at the time.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm super excited because I think as much as Ben and I can talk to you about all of the things that people have found useful this year, hearing it from them, like they're saying every single thing that we've been writing into documents for the last 4 weeks. So it just makes me really excited that you get to hear it from their perspective. And I think that's one of the things that's really important about that community. Like Barth was saying, don't be shy about using your community, whether it's your small affinity group that you'll be placed into for the fall or just that big Google Plus community. I think the more that you can share and the more that you can just ask questions and build relationships in there, I think you'll find it really valuable because you guys are all in the same boat trying to work through some of the very same things. And so don't struggle on your own when you can kind of put it out there and work through it together. So I want to show a video clip, and Barth, we're going to start with yours. I chose the Rube Goldberg. It's really hard to choose which video from any of these people to use because I just really love them all. So I recommend poking around in their YouTube channels and watching some of the other videos they have. But I particularly like this one. This is something that happened recently. And before we start, I'm actually going to play it on, I'm going to speed it up so we can just kind of watch through a little more quickly. But Barth, can you tell us a little bit about how this video came about?
Okay, so one of the ways I've kind of historically wanted to use video, thank you, was to capture these moments of what I always refer to as like these little divergent moments where divergent thinking had entered the classroom. We didn't ask for it, we didn't expect, but it showed up. And the question for me was, how did that idea get in here? What was kind of the origins of that idea, and then just to watch the idea kind of play out, and then even how that idea might transpire or like kind of be communicated to others in the class and see how they react to this kind of divergent idea. So this particular one was based off a project called Cardboard Arcades. I share the video Kane's Arcade, which is about a 9-year-old boy who creates his own arcade. And I share the video with them and then invite the other second graders to participate in a similar kind of project. Well, they weren't creating an arcade necessarily, but what they had come up with was the Rube Goldberg machine, and it was kind of on their own, and I hadn't taught them that. So I thought that was interesting, and I captured it.
So Barth, after you recorded that video and you watched it, what did that do for your teaching practice, or what were you thinking about as you looked at it?
Well, trying to figure out how they came to some of the solutions they did, and I realized that it was through a process of trial and error, what you were watching them do. Things that were working and then not working, and then just making slight adjustments to their project to make it work better. So it was just another reminder to me. It's like, wow, it's never going to go right the first time. Let kids fail. Let kids have those mistakes, and just encourage them to keep working through it. And then when it is working well, acknowledge that. You know, they were so pumped the next day when I got to actually share an actual Rube Goldberg machine with them, you know, through video, and allow them to make that amazing connection, something that they were already doing but didn't ever know about. And so that was a huge aha, not just for their own team, but for the entire class, because we got to celebrate their work and you know, their ideas, and it was just it was a different way to celebrate. Yeah.
Awesome.
How did you speed up the video, Jessica?
Oh, that's a great question, Ben. Thank you for asking. So this is actually a really helpful tip. If you go down here to the settings, and then you go to speed, you can actually change it from normal. You can slow it down, or you can speed it up all the way to 2. And so sometimes if you're trying to find something in a video, or a lot of times I'll watch through some classroom practice that's been captured faster, and then I'll just kind of take a look at what minute it's at. Oh, I want to go back to minute 4 and really watch that 2 minutes of that section. So it can be a really helpful thing to kind of watch through things a little more quickly. And if you're not using the YouTube video player, but you want to speed up a video, you can talk to Ben, and he has a fancy extension. You can use it on any video, and you can speed it up that way too. So we'll send you lots of tips and tricks later. So I want to take a moment to pause and ask, does anyone have any questions so far that you'd like to ask the panel? Anything that you're wondering? Have a couple? Yeah.
Well, I was curious, how does the videotaping itself affect student behavior?
So I actually have a segue. Can I play a video? Because one of the things that I know people ask a lot is about that. So I have one of Lesley's CSR lessons, and it's queued up to a particular point so that we can watch something like that.
Right, and a lot of times missionaries, they were sent to convert people to Christianity. They were sent to other countries. And so a missionary, that's what that is in this context, that they were, was it down here? Well, she was run by missionaries, people who were trying to convert people to Christianity. Yes, yes, exactly right. Good job.
She's coming, she's coming. That's what I picture them saying to each other. So Lesley, do you want to start with that question?
You know, I just wanted it to be authentic, and so I just set it up, and I just let it go, and I ignored them. And I didn't say stop doing that or anything like that, and I just wanted it to be real, and that just showed the personality of some of the students, and some were on task, and some were, you know, distracted by it for a little while. But then sometime after that, I just kind of put it on my desk, and I think this might be a better idea. Just have it there all the time, so it's not something that's new and unusual. It's like, oh yeah, that's there every day. And sometimes I might turn it on, and sometimes I might turn it on. So I think that might help that in the future, so they don't see that it's something different. But again, I didn't do anything about it. I just let it be a real experience.
Anyone else want to field that question, Caitlin?
I agree with Lesley. One of the best things I found is that if you just leave it out, even if it's not on, the kids just get used to it, and it's no longer a, oh my gosh, I can see myself, oh, I can wave. The other thing I did is I let the kids wave and have that moment to be, this is your moment to see how it works and what it's going to do, and to really be able to just wave and get it out of most of their systems to be able to just say hi.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people have shared that throughout the year, that the more that they can upfront tell people what it is, or tell their students what it is that's going on, because your students are just as curious as an adult who walks in the room. People are going to ask, why are you recording your classroom? And so being able to share that with people and to kind of explain what it is you're doing, but especially with your kids, a lot of people have said it's really helpful when I am recording to just say, this is what I'm recording. It's because I'm a learner. I want to also grow. This is what I'm doing with the video. And then the kids can kind of see you as someone who's also on that learning trajectory and who's looking at their own practice, as well as letting them just kind of get it out of their system. Seems to be a popular way to just let the kids kind of get used to video, and then it's not really a novelty anymore. Ben?
Yeah, the only other thing I would mention is some of the folks chose to use it to record smaller groups, and just putting it in a smaller group and letting them actually, pass the marker around, or so that they are a part of it too. That's another way of sort of dealing with, like, there's this thing in the classroom, but it's actually helping me learn, right? In the same way it helps my teacher to learn, it helps me to learn, because I can watch the video of me talking, or I can, my teacher can watch the group video afterwards and provide support to me. I can't remember who it was, but you were saying, I want the cube in order to put it in one of the small groups so that I can record the audio, or I can record the kids doing the group work so that I can see what they're doing. Now, clearly you're not going to do that every single day because that's a lot of video to watch. But the idea of like, I want to make sure that they've got this procedure down, or I want to make sure that they have this in the group, it's a really good way to be able to be in multiple places at once, which is kind of crazy.
Okay. And actually, oh, sorry, Barth, go ahead.
I wanted to share like one way I kind of demystified the whole, particularly the swivel one, because it moves. So I personified it and just swivel the robot. Everyone say hello. Oh, great! It's a and then it's exciting. And well, we got a robot because it does move and it's interactive. And that's how we did it. Awesome.
That's super fun. The other thing I was going to say is that the flip side of getting them used to it and then ignoring it is that we've actually had a lot of teachers who have been focusing on classroom management and behavior management, and they've actually used it as a tool in order for them to grow in their classroom management. And so something they'll do is, in this case, for example, where if the teacher watched the video at the end of the day and saw those kids kind of doing that and not being on task, then they might talk to them the next day and say, hey, I noticed yesterday when you were doing this, and then the kids start to very quickly piece together like, oh, teacher has eyes everywhere, even when they're totally back to me. And so it becomes, again, another tool for learning and for growth. And to be able to, I've had a couple teachers say, my class this year, it's just, I think we've all had one of those classes, right, that just about kills you by the end of the year. And I had a couple teachers say to me, by putting those devices out there and then watching that night and then talking to the kids about it the next day, that's the only way I've been able to do collaborative groups and actually teach my mini lesson with another group. And so you can also use it in that way to really support, and like Ben said, it's multiple eyes in your classroom rather than just you trying to field all of those things. There was another question over here. Yeah?
I had a question about permission as far as parents that might be concerned with videotaping. How have you had any children that weren't allowed to be on videotape, and how do you address that?
Yeah, so we didn't get to talk really specifically about the parent agreements in the agreements discussion, but we have gone through our legal department and made sure that we actually wrote up a specific cam opener agreement for parents to opt out of, not opt into. So that makes it a little bit easier for you. It is translated into the 12 consent decree languages so that you can send it home. But it allows you to send it home at the beginning of the year and know by, I think we put a date on there of September 28th. Know by then, who's okay on camera and not. And quite frankly, the folks that had that particular issue where they received some back, they very quickly went past them if they are doing the video, or if those kids are on video, you can still capture it. You just can't share it, right? So you can still use it for your own growth. You just can't share it in the community because they don't have the permissions, but very easily you can strategically place kids around the room or do different things like that. Did anybody have any stories about that?
I just wanted to mention, just be aware when you have new kids come into your classroom. I know in my school, I'm getting new kids coming into the classroom, and it was even beyond the date, the return date, and so, just make sure you remember to hand out the forms and maybe adjust the date so that everybody is included, because it's really easy to forget when they put new children in your classroom and you've already passed that. I did that 2 months ago, but just make sure you include them.
That's a great point. The other thing, too, is that as a teacher, I found just having a good conversation with the parent, if they do sign it and say that they don't consent for their child to be on camera, sometimes it's just because they don't understand what you're doing with the video. I think our forms say really clearly what the purpose is, but sometimes they're just not sure, well, what does sharing it mean and what will that look like? So as with any other forms that we send home, if you have, 1 or 2 kids where you get that back, a phone call to the parent sometimes just helps clear that up, and then they say, oh yeah, that's fine, I don't mind, and then I just send home another one, and then they can sign it. Yeah.
That's a good idea. I mean, I guess raise your hand if you're a singleton, if you're the only person in your school. There's a handful of us. Well, because we see such a huge volume of students, it is maybe a good idea to be selective of maybe what classrooms you do want to document. because if you're concerned about, distributing permission forms to that amount of students and trying to organize all that, that can seem a little overwhelming. There's a couple things that I did. One was to focus on an area of practice where there was a real need. In the visual arts, it's 4th grade, because that's our target assessment group. So we did a lot of videotaping in 4th grade to try to capture student comprehension and have more reflective practices. So the bulk of filming would happen in that at that grade level. But at my school, video practice is, I wouldn't say it's common, but we've been doing it for years now, and several years, and at the beginning of the year, parents sign permission forms to allow for video practice to happen in their classroom, just because it's just kind of an ongoing thing. So it may be the case that your school and parents have already signed something like that. And I guess you could ask your principals and your secretaries if that happens at the beginning of the school year during registration, because it sometimes does. And if it
trumps Project King.
Well, I wouldn't say it trumps.
Well, so ours is specific to Cam Opener. So the Cam Opener agreements, the way that we worked it out with legal is that it does trump the media release, like the generic one that the whole school gets, because that's really general. Like but if your whole school has looked at the use of video and of recording, because you already have a specific scope, you may not even have to send home the Cam Opener proposal or the agreement. But I would look at with your school leader to make sure that that would be the case. I think that's only probably the case for a couple of schools, but yeah.
You could also see if you could get it in with registration. Sometimes you can just sort of add it to the packet that everyone's getting, and then in your case, 500 people could get a copy of it, rather than you trying to send them all home with the kids at the beginning of the year. So there was a question in here about what precautions have you taken to keep the equipment safe yet student accessible? Anybody have a thought on that? How do you keep your equipment safe but out?
Well, when I charge it, I only leave it out when I'm there, and then I lock it up for the night, because I personally just don't feel safe leaving it out charging. I think it's really easy for somebody to come in your room and just pick up that iPad mini and swivel. It's so little and cute, and I think just and even if I lock my doors when I leave, custodians open them. And sometimes we have outside groups that come in and use the school after the teachers are gone. And so I just make sure to lock it up in my cupboard every night and charge during the day.
I agree with that too. Some of it with the students is just making sure that they know that it's either okay to touch or not okay to touch. So like the swivel was one of the things that I said it wasn't okay to play with unless I gave you the remote, just so that it didn't get knocked off. Mine sat on a shelf when it was out, so it was fairly stable. It was in the back of the classroom, and the kids didn't play with it per se. When it comes to the iPad, that's one of those things you have to keep tabs on a little bit more, just because the swivel, while cool, the kids aren't necessarily going to want to take that home and use it at home. But the iPad is something that they might like to use at home or play with wherever they are. One of the things I did with that is I had to put on a longer password than just the 4-digit numbers, which meant that when I gave out iPads, I had to then type in that password, which is a little bit annoying, but it also meant that I could control who was on an iPad, and then I couldn't miss that a child had taken an iPad and was using it without me watching, that term of things.
So I want to show another couple of clips. We have one from Caitlin, actually. Caitlin, thank you for creating this cute little video for us. I emailed her last minute and she put this together for us. So this is something that happened in her classroom.